Hi everyone, Sniffany Cotano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Uncommon NASA album, Halfway! Uncommon NASA is a New York rapper, producer, Mr. Paul Lavaro. He's been at it for many, many years at this point. However, this new decade has brought a recent string of solo releases from Mr. NASA over here. Last year, you can check my review, I was very impressed with the incredibly grimy, poetic, and conceptual New York Telephone, which featured all these very layered, textured, off-kilter beats, some really cool New York-inspired lyrical themes and song concepts, a spoken word-ish flow, very cool vocal and featured guests, as well as a series of interviews with people who appeared on the album talking about their experiences in New York as artists and just, you know, humans. Now, a lot of these same characteristics show up on this new record as well. However, the concept is very different from what New York Telephone's concept was. On this new record over here, the theme is death. Dun, dun, dun. The interviews that work themselves in between these tracks are really just kind of solo musings of Paul's or podcast-type conversations with his significant other. And these conversations, these monologues, kind of glide us from one section of the album to the next. And NASA's flow and delivery and lyrical style is pretty much the same. If it didn't wow you on his previous few projects, it's not really going to wow you here, although I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing for me. I like his lyrical style. I like his flow style. It intrigues me as much here as it has on his previous few records. And Paul does give us some cool song ideas on this thing, like on the title track, where lyrically Paul kind of paints the human race as a series of ticking down clocks with an unknown halfway point. I like the lyrics on the song Cold Like a Brother, where I guess in a way NASA kind of further paints his lone wolf life status and kind of paints the cold as like a friend, a family member, how turning on the heat makes the cold go away, and being warm is more lonely than actually being cold, where the cold is there like a brother. There's a track here as well where he's rapping about dreams and sleep and fear of sleep, and how sleep in 1 second you could dream an entire lifetime, and which reality is the real or the better reality. And I actually love the ending of this song too, how it ends with his name being shouted, so then he wakes up from that dream, which makes the song over. Lyrics like, I hope your bed is comfortable, but not so much that you don't get up from it, I thought really struck me as funny. And we have a few conceptual detours that don't directly deal in the death theme of this record, kind of like on the song Pipe Dreams, where Paul pulls together this really odd description of like a, I don't know, a hip-hop underground club wet dream where graffiti artists from the late 70s are spray painting everywhere, and people can't find the venue, and people have beepers, and there's a coat check that nobody uses. It's pretty funny, pretty absurd. And then later in the album, we get a cut where Paul is rapping about how he doesn't watch the news anymore, which doesn't directly deal in the existentialist themes of a lot of the songs here, but he does take issue with how the news media exploits death for its benefit. I guess the one thing that does get to me about this song, though, is that it doesn't really have that strong of a beat or that strong of a structure or anything like that. And lyrically, it just kind of feels like more of a rant than it does a song. However, the track does at least glide us into the next track where we're living in these dark times, and NASA is rapping about Eric Garner and how Lucy should never be a reason to die, and just the kind of tragedies that kicked off this whole Black Lives Matter movement very recently. This album gets pretty sentimental on the closer, where Paul is rapping in a way directly to his wife and talking about how his music is their children. That is literally what this song is about. How his love for her, their relationship together, the fact that they help each other, if none of that had happened, this music wouldn't be there. So throughout this record, Paul dives into a lot of very heavy personal, interesting themes. However, I do have an issue generally with this album, and it's pretty much with the production, Black Tokyo's production to be specific. Black Tokyo being the guest producer that NASA brought onto this project to pretty much do every beat here. And there's just not much about the beats on this record that I care for. Other than that, they are kind of minimalist and stark and allow for the lyrical themes of this album to really impact in a supreme way. But outside of that, I find the beats on here to be kind of just thinking about them, honestly. I guess issue number one that I have with these beats are the drums. I think the drum sounds are just so flat, synthetic, and inappropriate for the really organic and rootsy and chilling and just very real topics being talked about in these lyrics. Not only do I find the drum sounds to be really weak and kind of take away from what's going on here lyrically, but I think a lot of the grooves that are being played are super, super stiff, almost as if just the drums are a little too quantized to the point where the groove kind of gets stale and loses flavor as the song moves along. Then there are the samples and a lot of the melodies that are worked into these tracks. Sometimes they're pretty decent, but a lot of the time they're so faint and so hidden and so packed away into the background that they really don't add that much to the song. The Bjork sample on the song Skin Tells Stories is okay. I like the kind of tedious groove and bass on the song about the news on this thing. It kind of feels like a ticking clock, and in a really interesting way, I think the instrumental embodies the frustration that I often feel myself having with 24-hour news networks. But outside of that, between the drums, between these incredibly faint samples, especially on tracks like Clown Car, which to me are one of the most barren songs on the entire record. These instrumentals don't really leave me with a whole lot to grab onto musically. I'm just kind of left to enjoy the lyrics, which I do, but I just wish there was a stronger, more dramatic musical component coming through on these instrumentals. There's even that one instrumental behind Living in These Dark Times that samples Epitaph from King Crimson, but the sample doesn't even properly line up with the drums. It's almost as if the melody isn't really complementing what's going on with Paul's flow all that well. It's like that weird little musical sample is just totally out of sync with the drums and loops on an offbeat, so it never really properly feels like it's in the groove of the song all that tightly. It's unfortunate because lyrically I think this album has a lot of good things going for it, and conceptually as well. I'm just not really into these instrumentals much of the time, unfortunately. I feel like at their best they're just kind of doing the bare minimum of what you would want a hip-hop instrumental to do. Still, I don't think it takes away so much from the album that it's not enjoyable. I still did come away from this album liking it a lot. I'm feeling a light 7 on this thing. Transition, have you given this record a listen? If you have, did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, music forever. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, you know who it is, and right now you are looking at a picture of the feature page on our brand new website, which we got from Squarespace earlier this year. You can not only find a link down there in the description box where you can start your own website for your home business, your hobby, at a discount via Squarespace, but we also have a link over there to a playlist of songs from the golden age of hip-hop, the 80s. So it's just pretty much nothing but golden age hip-hop in the playlist singles and some deep cuts from some pretty fantastic records. If you want to familiarize yourself with this era of hip-hop, check out that playlist below. And of course, if you want to build your own website, that Squarespace link is below as well. And thank you for listening. Bye.